right, 9:15. Give this a couple of minutes, let some people join. I think I've got some people in the room already. If you don't mind, just go into the chat. Drop something in the chat just so I know I've got some bodies in the room. All right, I see some people here. Nice. Hey, Toby, I see you. Yeah, I guess I got a new stand for my microphone here. I don't know if you can see it. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone. 31 people already. Wow. Nice. Very cool. Good. I'm gonna let some people come in and make their way into the room over the next minute or so. But while we're doing that, while people are still joining, why don't we get some people to say who are they? What's your job? Are you like an analyst? Are you a scientist, a project manager, TA manager? Put that in the chat so I can understand who's in the room. Hey, Sam, good morning. I see that, Toby. All right. So it looks like we've got a pretty good mix. I'm seeing some people who want to transition into TI. I see some different types of analysts, some senior leaders in here. I think I saw some people from recruitment. Great. And just so I can get some perspective, mostly, are you guys focusing more from a TA perspective? How many people are coming here from outside of TA? Cool. Part of the same. You got to stay. I see you, Alan. We got to stay, got to represent. All right. So let me get started. I think we've got a lot of content to cover. And we've got some room at the end for some questions and conversations. I will be popping back into the chat from time to time to take a look at what's going on in there. And then sometimes I will have it closed. Or actually, I'll just keep it open so I can keep an eye on it. But let me start first by saying hi. Thanks for being here. My name is Lyndon Llanes, and I lead Verizon's talent intelligence. And and my background has been, excuse me, my background prior to talent intelligence has been in compensation, in turnover, in selection and assessment, and then finally here. So I bring a lot of different perspectives to the table. You'll see that come through in these next couple of slides and the influence that a lot of this has on, how we've kind of grown at Verizon. So with that, let's cover the agenda. We're going to discuss Verizon's own evolution, some of the main lessons learned, the process that we're going to talk about recommending. That doesn't have to be that way, but this is a good framework to get you to where you want to be, what it enables, and then some Q&A. Hopefully you're all here because you want to know about, the business intelligence and analytics side of talent intel. So to get there, I think we need to look at where we've been. So I want to start off with our own evolution here at Verizon, kind of going from past to present to future. And when we look at this slide, one of the things I really want to focus on in the past is we were kind of inefficient. We had manual data pulls. It was entirely reactive. Every project was pretty much a unique build, and projects were isolated, and the working models were isolated. Take that to where we are today. We've got structured architecture and data pulls to feed our models. We've gone proactive, for the broad and defined cases. And we have projects that have blueprints. They're no longer like, hey, I've got to reinvent a wheel. We've got project blueprints. And we're continually taking best practices iteratively. So where they were disjointed and isolated in the past, we're constantly like hive minding our process where, one person might have done something and it is a rock star deliverable. It's got all the bells and whistles. They've enhanced the analytics dashboard or visualization. We're going to take that and scale it and put it into like build a mold and mass produce. In the future, what we'd want to do is really focus on more improved ETL. For those who don't know what the ETL is, that's extract, transform, and load. It is going to be a huge part of building out your TI as BI. I wish I'd had someone help wordsmith the title, but someone's going to have to think. You're going to need to know what ETL is, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. We want to get more predictive, and in the future, we're going to go for more scope and depth with analyses and data sources. So that's a lot of our own evolution, and one of the things I want to call out really quick about these slides, this visual analogy that we have here, is that the first cars were all built as kind of custom one-offs, right? It was very long process to build a car. That is until you get to Henry Ford and he says, well, I'm going to change that process. We're going to go with assembly lines. We're going to go with mass production. And that really significantly increased volume and scale and speed for how cars were delivered and changed everything. That's something we're going to discuss in the future slides, but that's really like some of the accelerators and change that you can think about. There's a precedence for that acceleration and change in another industry. And you can think about how that might even change your own practice. I want to start with lessons learned here really quick and early. I think this is a place where I wasn't sure where to throw it in the slides, but they are so important that they need to be in here. And I just want to throw them up front for all of you because they are like, it's hard to throw them into a particular spot. But if you had to take key points, these are these are critical. So lessons learned. Let me close this. Sorry about that. Lessons learned. Borrow from different disciplines. Taking lessons from product marketing, agile teams really transformed the way that we've done our work here at Verizon. We use product marketing to develop solutions for specific segments of our clients. We focus on MVPs and sprints with product roadmaps. And we've taken a lot of different cues and inspirations from different business models from our partners across the board. Become a trusted partner. I think this sounds easier on paper, harder to do in practice, but really, establishing credibility by working cross-functionally quickly and with expertise has led to many new partnerships, tons of new projects, different practice verticals and products. Our scope broadened really because people saw us, appreciated our work, and mostly importantly trusted us. We gained influence and buy-in by doing a lot of the analyses in-house. Third, embracing a continuous mindset has been a major impact for how we've developed our business analytics function. Shifting away from an episodic thinking to something more continual really changes the conversation. So it becomes a question of when versus, pass or fail. It takes like sprints and changes it to, building solutions versus like meeting the deadline or not and failing to do things. And it really reframes projects into ongoing relationships versus like transactional work. And that really helps build the trust. Okay. Has anyone watched Netflix's Lock and Key? I don't know if anyone, if you have, you're going to get this. If not, just the premise of the show is that there's a magic house. They have magic special keys. And each key gives the holder some kind of special powers. Yeah, Aaron, the last season really wasn't that great. But the concept is pretty cool. each key gives someone a special power. Sometimes you can take those keys and stack them together, right, and get some really cool combinations. So if we take that thought process, keys to BI are really reproducibility, speed, and scale. Imagine that the reproducibility skill lets you replicate an analysis. It lets you clone your insights over and over again. The speed skill lets you do things fast, like being able to do something like that would take normally previously 4 weeks in a day, less. The scale key lets you gives you dimensionality and volume, right? You get to go big or you get to go small, right? And the big thing is the great thing is you can control that. You can control the scale, and all of these keys kind of interact. Like all three of them together is going to help give you a successful BI practice. and really, what isn't fitting all three of these, you have to start like evaluating. Hey, that's like on a continuum. Remember, we're not doing episodic binary thinking. It's more of a continuum. But if it's not fast and it's more slow, but it's still got reproducibility and scale, how do we address that problem versus something that checks all the boxes?
Sorry to jump in. Do you want to take 30 seconds and grab yourself a glass of water? Because you've got that thing I get where you can feel, you've got some water. I've just been told off by Alison and Toby not for jumping in and saying you can do that.
Oh no, I appreciate it so much. I have post residual COVID syndrome or something other.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine, but what that means is I get this annoying cough like that I can't get rid of for months.
I'll have my phone on standby for 911 just in case we have to have a live call.
Yeah, if someone's on my team, they can just tell Verizon to send someone to my address.
All right, I'll leave you alone. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Let's talk about process. What process are we using to help establish scale and speed and reproducibility? We're going to frame this in these 5 buckets. And what we're really talking about here is data inventory, clients, practice verticals, product development, and roadmap. And we're going to explain on each slide what we're actually talking about here. So the first up is data inventory. You really have to assess your data and take inventory of what's available. Before we can sell anything, build anything, do anything, you kind of need to know what you have in stock, right? What have you got to actually build with? So we're going to start with that inventory. We're going to ask ourselves these questions and say, what data is accessible? Who are our partners? What's the quality of the data? What's granularity? Is it volatile, right? How hard is it to retrieve that data? Do you have an API or do you have to go through like 20 clicks and type manually to get that information? How hard is it to shape the data? There are times where you're only getting a summary, and because of the summary, it impacts your ability to create joins and insights that you would be able to do if you had the raw data set. Or maybe the raw data set's just massive and you're talking about millions of data points, billions of data points, and you kind of don't want that. You just want the summary, right? How's the data stored? Is it in cloud, on-prem? Is it on a floppy disk in a drawer somewhere, right? Where is that data, and what is how are you taking inventory of it, right? And that's really important for how you're going to move forward, because if you haven't got a good stable data inventory and a way to get to all of it, and you can take this moment to say, hey, I'm not there yet. What do I need to get there? And how do I do something with the data once I get it, right? And the next couple of slides, we'll even talk about building the use case. If you don't have the data, how do you get there, right? After you've got your data, we'll talk about client segmentation, right? So the second icon was really talking about clients. So imagine that each group uses our data in different ways, and what will they care about? What tools do we have that supports them, right? So this is a representative breakout of what our client portfolio might look like. We've got 38% TA and about equal distribution for workforce planning, compensation, and HRBPs. And so in the sample slide, we need to know what our clients want and what's applicable to them. So who's the client? Talent acquisition. Their mission statement is to attract and attain talent. Their interaction with TI is to source, select markets, target competitors, and look at emerging talent. What data do we have that is applicable for them, right? How can we help? Well, we have information on supply, we have demand, we have costs, geos, competitors, schools, skills, etc. And you take the same thing and you iterate over your client segments. You should also be looking at, changes in your client segments, right? If, for example, compensation at one point in time was like 30% of our work. And because of that large growth, we actually built out more tools and provided more resources to them. And this number went down. This number went down because we gave them a lot of tools and they self-served. So we had less projects. But figure out who your clients are and how much work you're getting from them. All right, now that you know what your data looks like and what data your clients need, it's helpful to organize them into practice verticals. What's the natural and logical grouping of data points that can be combined together, right? What do you have that's live? What's coming down the pipe? When you don't have any products, right? Like this TBD over here, we don't have anything planned. We can talk about that a little bit in the next slide, but before we move forward, just look at this summary or this example of how you can set up your practice verticals, right? Our market analyses, competitive analyses, roles and skills, and a quick anchor to what we're looking at in each one. So for markets, we're anchoring to geographically bound analytics. We're saying that it's tiered by geospatial granularity. So like national, state, MSA and sub-MSA, those are things that impact the tier list and impact the analysis. How hard is it to pull the data? Remember, we looked at that. How available or accessible is it? So that impacts the tier list. All of this stuff would be all of these variables that you would see from the other page kind of get baked into here to build out the different products. And you can kind of keep track on what's live, what's in development, and where you're going to be going forward. Taking the previous slide and stacking it on here, we'll talk about product development to make that previous TBD into something tangible and useful. So if we looked at this, we can say, who's talent acquisition? What's the mission statement interaction? What's our available current tools? Well, we have market scans, emerging talent, and proto. For SWP, we've got market scans, emerging talent, and emerging skills. And compensation, they've got different tools. If we're going to build a new tool, we can kind of go through a format to say, what's their interaction and what's applicable future tool. So in this example, what we're really thinking about is, well, let me first start off by saying I had a hard time faking an example. So I picked something that was kind of like some examples here that are kind of PG-13 and cool for public consumption. So if we take a look at this and we say, hey, what's a safe place? Well, we're going to say we're going to enhance our market scans. And the concept is to retune the scores with added variables and features. We talk about the purpose, and we discuss contingencies, models, and environments, where XYZ metrics, we're going to need feedback loop, correlations. We'll need HR reporting from our from Cognos or whatever you're using. And then we'll do some of the coding in our environment, and we need to ensure that the ETL process is feasible. And then you have some process notes on data munging, training on feedback, and then model trial and error. So this is a good framework, a process that we go through to get to product development. What do the clients care about and need? What do we have that they need? And then how do we fill in gaps that we weren't able to address? How are we able to give insights that we have data on to solve the needs that they have based on meetings and mission statements and continued partnership. Here we're going to be talking about, excuse me. Here we're going to be talking about, roadmaps, which I think are one of the ways that we have been able to continually develop and evolve. We develop sprints and minimally viable products with release dates. And, we've got some examples here of what that can look like. One of the cool things about this, One of the cool things about this is that it really allows you to get out of your own way, right? With the roadmaps, you're going through a process of saying, hey, what do we need to get this usable, right? What is to a usable state? So you might go and say, to get to complete sprint 1, version 1 which is logarithmic llama, we need to have the data and these type of insights, minimal. And then that's it. You can iron out any of the issues and kinks at a later point in time, and you'll be okay. You can fix them in p-value platypus, right? You can think of cool names. We don't think of cool names, and I'm jealous. And you can totally do that, and I love that. Let's look at the process with Legos. You can imagine that everything in 1 to 3 is your ETL process. 4 and 5 would be your analysis, and 6 would be your client verticals. And so, summarize all of that. To summarize all of that, we've got our data inventory, our clients, our practice verticals, our product lines, and our roadmap is our process that we've gone to building out our process as an analytics function. And all of that stuff is incredibly powerful and lets you do things. And you might say, like, hey, Linda, I thought we were going to see something cool. I promise you I'll go into a bit of that on the next slide, where we'll talk about, what does all of that enable, right? All of that stuff sound like super strategic and very business admin-y kind of stuff. And this is honestly where I start to get super excited. Like, this is the fun shit. Excuse me. We'll talk about the ability to do NLP, clustering, classification, time series, and even more because we're following the previous architecture and process that we were talking about. So some of the cool things that you get to do first is, let's start with the primer for NLP first, right? NLP, for people who don't know what that is, natural language processing, it's pretty much how do machines interpret data, words, text, right? So here on the left is how a normal human being sees a job posting. And on the right is how a machine sees it, right? We see words, we see periods, statements, punctuations. The machine sees document 1, 2, 3, and 4, breaks it up across multiple documents, and then itemizes each word in each document. It creates a neural network of how the words interact with each other across the documents. So when we understand this primer, we're able to do really fun things with clustering. I love this. This is the fun stuff, right? Using the network analysis, and blurry on purpose. I went back and forth with how much to pixelate this, but we can look at how skills can overlap with each other, right? So in this cluster, we've got a cluster for data science here in green, a cluster for data visualization in blue, a cluster for BI here in red. And if we want to reskill or expand our talent pool, business intelligence employees that are going to overlap with data science over here are going to be a really good place to start if we need more data scientists. So you could take the folks here who overlap, and all the way to the far right, that's the stuff that's unique, right? So these folks are here in this side. They're kind of like in the middle, kind of. You could scale them up, ramp them up to this point, but really you can say like, oh, I'm a data scientist when I know all of this. Quick note, this is an imperfect, super small, tiny data set. Please don't tell everybody that Lyndon showed you a visualization where like data management was the only unique skill tied to like data viz. I want to make sure that you know that. This is just for representative purposes. Other things we get to do with the same stuff, using the same visualization. Let's talk about classification. Since machine learning is unique to the data science cluster, we can make reasonable classification model where the occurrence of machine learning increases likely classification for data science. That is fascinating. It opens doors to things like Bayesian statistics, nearest neighbors, etc. Right? So you can say like, hey, how do you know that someone's a data scientist if they know machine learning? Well, there's only really one group that knows that. The same way, like when someone says like, how do you know someone's a firefighter? It's like, well, he says he climbs ladders and he has a hose. Like he works with a hose. He's either a gardener or a firefighter. I got a 50-50 shot, right? You can create classification models when you bring some of this work in-house, which is fascinating, and you can scale it to not just external but internal applications of your talent. Scaling back away from some of the coding into more of like the BI standard type of analyses, you can do time series. So for this example, we can see that pirates are generally coming off a compressed hiring from the last few months, where there's this constant increase. It's going to be harder than normal there. Astronauts had a huge spike, but we saw that cool down right about here. So, this helps do resource planning. You can tell the TA team saying like, look, I know you're trying to go hard on the astronauts and throw resources there. They don't need it. The pirates need it. They're constantly getting hammered, right? The astronauts had a quick hit and then they came back down. Lastly, my Y page didn't come up. Oh, here we go. Lastly, why are you going to do all this? Just to throw on some main things to keep in mind. Differentiation. Why bring all of this in-house? Some of the cool things to really think about is if you go through your vendors, and I love our vendors, but they're selling the same solution to a lot of other people, right? So, if you bring this in-house, you're going to get unique insights. You're going to get differentiation from what other people are doing. You gain competitive advantage. Internal fusion is another thing. You bring the analytics in-house, you get to tap and blend with internal data sources and structures. Gives you much more powerful things. Third, we can do better. As a TI, as in general, we need to do better. I think as a function, as a practice, we need to get more people doing this in-house. I love the vendors, but vendors can only take us so far as a practice, right? So people need to scale up on their own for here. And finally, costs. You bring this in-house and you're going to save tons of costs from hiring additional consulting, and it's going to help you align with the values. I know we're short in time. I'm going to open up for questions. Take a couple, maybe two. Let's see, anything? Oh, Q&A. All right, thank you. Yeah, data sources for NLP. Yeah, job postings are one of them. Honestly, that's the hard part about data sources for NLP. I'll tell you that I don't think you can use resumes. They're not great. I think one of the things you actually have to do, and what we've discovered through our own journey, is that you have to engineer your own data for some of these. Like you want to ask someone a particular question, like what skills are required for this job. That way the data is actually going to be targeted, direct, and useful. And you actually want to look at data quality and saying like, hey, I need you to put more than 3 words here, right? So you want to make sure you're getting the right amount of variance and the quality is good. And that's Toby's question. Do you find greater buy-in from other internal intelligence data teams because of the approach, or do you feel challenged? Toby, we do get challenged sometimes, but I think it's more of collaborative challenge. The same way in academia, you will poke holes at in front of like a review board with peers. And I think bring this stuff internal, like we get more buy-in and trust because we're internal and because we've built the credibility through ongoing partnerships by being able to if we can stand in front of them while they throw stones at us and do it continually, they eventually start to gain respect and say like, all right, this guy can handle this. Like this team can handle this. It's not made out of glass. Last question. How can you quantify or deliver an objective ROI based on the value derived from usage of other tools, services rendered by TI? So I think quantifying value is one of the ways to look at it is if there was a cost to it. Like, for example, if someone's doing this and they have a vendor resource and you say, hey, there's duplication here, we can save you the amount of money that you're spending for that duplicitous vendor. Like our campus team was paying for emerging talent data for campus stuff. And then we said, we'll do it for free. So the cost there for whatever amount that was is the ROI. And I think that's it. Thank you for all for joining. I'm going to be switching over to the next session. I hope you've had fun. I hope you learned something cool. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, that was amazing, Lyndon. You need to hot tail it over to the next one now.
Yes. Yep, I'm hopping over now.
Cool. All right, guys. Cheers.